Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star sports podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and this is the Chiefs Playoff Edition show. We'll see if there's more than one of this particular edition. If history is an indication, this won't be a one-off. The Chiefs have won at least one playoff game with Patrick Mahomes as the starting quarterback and have played in 5 straight AFC title games. This year's quest begins with a Saturday game against the Miami Dolphins. On today's show, beat writer Jesse Newell and columnist Vahe Gregorian discuss the Chiefs and their postseason prospects, what needs to happen for the Chiefs to advance, what could derail them. We discuss the weather. Yes, that's going to be a story. The Dolphins, Tyreek Hill's return to Arrowhead, and much more. Okay, let's get started. What was that, Vahe?
Sophisticated studio work.
Absolutely it is.
I think it's just a reflection of the adaptability of this squad. Nimble.
Very much so. That's Vahe Gregorian. You just heard him. Jesse Newell's here. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We're missing Sam McDowell today. But we'll have Sam back next week when we record another podcast after the Chiefs defeat the Miami Dolphins in the wild card round of the playoffs.
Or
the season wrap-up for the Chiefs after they fall to the Miami Dolphins in the wild card round of the playoffs. What was the line? It's 3.5?
3.5 as we talk, yep.
Okay. Has it changed? I saw it the first we all get the odds on Sunday night after the games or next week's NFL games. First one I saw was 4.5, but
it's 4 now. So
it's up to
4.5 to 3.5 to 4.
I wonder if the weather plays into it, or more likely Dolphins injuries. That's a banged up team.
You go as far as saying depleted. I mean that's quite a list.
It is. Van Ginkel for one on the defensive line. I know. I was looking up stats on him and very underrated. He's a top 10 player defender according to Pro Football Focus in the NFL, and so that's a major one. The thing I will caution against a little bit, though, is because it's the playoffs, it seems like guys are going to push themselves to get in there. And if you want to talk about Miami having its full complement on offense, Achane is a beast and
fast.
And Waddle is obviously a guy that doesn't get as many headlines as Tyreek Hill, but that's the guy that obviously he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL according to PFF too. So maybe he doesn't get the headlines, but if they can get a running back and a wide receiver back, then potentially that does help them on offense. And it's probably what's making this line a little bit closer than you anticipate.
Why did it work so well for the Chiefs in the first half of the regular season game against the Dolphins in Frankfurt? 21-0 at halftime. I thought the game was over. It was not, because the 2023 Chiefs are who they are. They don't win games like that the way they used to. There were a couple this year, the Bears game, the first Chargers game. But anyway, it ended up 21-14. But the Chiefs did get off to a great start in that game. It was like the best of both worlds. Offense moved the ball down the field. Defense had the highlight play of the year, the fumble, the strip, and lateral, and Brian Cook returned for a touchdown. But what do you guys remember about that game that might be instructive for this playoff game?
Well, Jesse, go ahead. You look like you had a.
Oh no! I mean, so talking to the defenders, this is sort of like the opposite of the Chiefs' offense, which is things can go bad for Miami for a long time, and then there's an 80-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? It sort of reminds me of college basketball when you got 3-point shots. Like, you can have a bunch of bad stuff happen, but if you make 13 of 29 threes, you're probably winning. You know what I mean? And Miami has a lot of things that can go wrong for their offense, but if you get a step behind Tyreek Hill or your eye discipline is not right and you get beat on something, then he's gone. And he makes up 80 yards in one drive. We know how difficult the Chiefs, when they haven't had their big plays this year, how tough it's been for them to grind down the field and just continue to get first downs, continue to make those plays, and then at the end not turn it over. I mean, that's what's so hard. So looking back at some of the tape, the Chiefs just did a really, really good job. Their safeties were in tune to always get depth and get back on Tyreek and even Jalen Waddle, guys that can get by you. Trent McDuffie made a couple really standout plays, standout tackles, because A couple times they caught the Chiefs in some interesting coverages and or they were about to blow a coverage, and McDuffie just made a tackle from behind where if he doesn't make that tackle, a 9-yard gain turns into a 70-yard gain. So you really just have to be focused in and you have to be in on the game plan. Talked to Joshua Williams, the cornerback for the Chiefs in the locker room. He said that coaches were really happy when they came back to Kansas City from Germany about how they had locked in on the game plan. But outside of that, you need some guys to make some individual plays so that 9-yard gains don't become 70-yard gains. And I think we saw that from Trent McDuffie a couple times last game and sort of preventing the worst case scenario, which is Miami can not look that great, and then all of a sudden they have a touchdown you look up because of the speed and the talent that they have.
You made me think of a couple things there, but just a couple scattershot points. The dynamics of each of these games are always different, right? But the result of that game was pretty consistent with what the Chiefs' defense has been all season, second in the NFL in points allowed ultimately, and consistent with how Miami plays against top 10 defenses, which is, I believe this number's correct. Miami averages something like 18 points against top 10 defenses and 40 points against bottom 10 defenses. So all that stuff's a little bit consistent. The one real outlier in it, in a way, for the Chiefs defensively was producing one of just 2 defensive touchdowns it's produced all season. And the other one was obviously the 97-yard Mike Edwards return against the Chargers in the game that, really didn't matter in the seeding. So, how they get there, obviously that's the game within the game that's going to really matter. But I think for Chiefs fans, they probably ought to take some, not inspiration exactly, but have some faith that that's what the Chiefs have been this season defensively. And the Dolphins have just really struggled. I think 1-5 against those top 10 teams defensively. It's a different team against the good teams.
Right. I think that one win may have been against the Cowboys when they beat Dallas at home.
Yeah.
But they looked good. Obviously, it was
pretty
really
recent too, like just 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was recently. It was a really nice win for the Dolphins. But then the more recent game was the night game against the Bills, and I don't remember there being a big Dolphins play in that game. Not one that not of the 75-yard variety, and it was absolutely a game Miami should have won. Bills turned it over 3 times in the red zone. How do you get away with the victory after doing that, committing those sins?
Yeah.
That was amazing that the Buffalo Bills came back and won that game. So that's why the Dolphins became the 6th seed and are coming to Kansas City, and Buffalo becomes the number 2 seed. And if the Chiefs win, that's where they'll head, assuming Buffalo beats Pittsburgh in the 2-7 playoff game. So when the Dolphins arrive here, it will be somewhat un-Miami weather for the Dolphins. The temperature. What's the latest temperature at game time?
Our photographer Nick Wagner just looked this up. That it would be -2 at game time with approximate wind chill of -18.
Okay.
But nowhere near as cold as the coldest game in Chiefs history, as you were just looking up.
Well, the temperature itself would make it the coldest game in Chiefs history, and one of the coldest games in NFL history. From if I can remember this, the graphic that I saw on this. But the wind chill, you're right, -18. That's balmy compared to the -33.
And I do think the wind chill is what I'm going to count, right? I mean,
right.
But nonetheless, -18 is going to be torture.
Right. So -33 was the 1983 season finale against the Denver Broncos when temperature at kickoff was 0, wind chill -33 because of the soft breezes across Arrowhead's then artificial turf.
But you make a good distinction about temperature at kickoff. What's the temperature going to be 3 hours later? More importantly, 5 hours later or 6 hours later when we're leaving.
I just pulled this up. Saturday night on AccuWeather, it says mostly cloudy and very cold with the temperature approaching the record low of -10 set in 1979. So that's the type of thing you're looking at, is potentially a record for this particular date in Kansas City history.
Okay. I had an email from somebody that I looked at just before I came in here who was asking, I don't know if he was a Dolphins fan or a Chiefs fan, but just a fan who wondered why the game couldn't be moved to a neutral site given the conditions. That's happened in NFL regular season games with the threat of usually something catastrophic, right? A hurricane, earthquake, something like that, but not for temperature. I don't recall temperature. Even the Chiefs moved a playoff game in 2016 against the Steelers that was scheduled for Arrowhead, and it was the threat of an ice storm that really never materialized in a way that we thought it was going to. But nevertheless, the game was moved a day. I think it actually went from a Saturday to a Monday night, and the game was played. That was the first night divisional round game, I believe, and they've had one ever since.
Yeah, it unleashed a really bad idea for a lot of people. Although I do think that the bright lights are what people want, right? You made me think of this though. It's something that I've now forgotten. Is what you made me think of. I already forgot it.
It's already simple. Let me fill that gap with this thought. We asked Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes today about these elements, and Andy, it's almost like insulting to Andy Reid to ask him about anything that is outside of the play, the play call or something.
Outside of what you can control.
Exactly, and his answers are often good, and he's a good interview in so many ways, but not in this way. He's not going to give you anything that the weather. What are you talking about? The weather? Who cares about the weather?
Yeah. I would say just get ready to play. That was kind of what he said. Although he did allow us how there might not be a real advantage for the Chiefs since they're not having a snowball fight. That was
his line.
The thing I just remembered was what Patrick said that I found interesting was he referred to it. This may not be the verbatim quote, but as real football when you're playing in this kind of condition. And that, just to circle back to the original thought about whether, should you move a game because of, harsh, inclement weather like this, I think that's the exact point of refuting it in some ways. Now, of course, fan consideration is a whole other matter. And I think Chiefs fans would want the game to be at home
for sure
rather than somewhere else, and they earned that advantage.
I mean, if the NFL was really concerned, they'd move the game up to the afternoon or had thought to put the game in the afternoon. At least you're saving 10 or 15 degrees there. But I think to your point, Vahe, that ship has sailed. They want this game in prime time, and I understand why. I mean, the intrigue is here. We heard Tyreek Hill talk about how he wanted to come back to Arrowhead. He was disappointed that game wasn't at Arrowhead because he wanted to come back here and show to the fans what he could do. And we can talk about this briefly too, but what reception is he going to get from Chiefs fans in this game? He's done a lot of chattering since he left Kansas City, and a lot of chattering that has not shed particularly positive light on whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid or how he felt valued around here. So he obviously had a complicated tenure with the Chiefs to start out with, one that you guys, were in the midst of covering. And so complicated is probably a really good word to talk about here, but how will he be received and how will he respond to that and how will he respond to the cold along with his teammates? I think those are all big storylines. Real quick, one did want to mention that I said Achane earlier. He was actually in last week. Mostert is the one that I think they're going to get back this week along with Waddle. So just, again, when you're talking about 4 of the fastest 5 guys in the NFL, that's them. Achane, Mostert, Waddle, and Hill. And so if we talk about all these injuries on the defensive side for the Miami Dolphins, which is a real thing, they just signed Justin Houston, who now, I looked on ESPN, he was on the top of their depth chart. They signed him today. He was on the top of their depth chart today. That's a desperate situation on defense, but on offense, this thing is probably not as desperate as it looks just because of the guys that they have back and the speed that we always talk about.
They had them all in Germany, didn't they? The relay team here?
They definitely had Waddle. They had Hill. I'd have to go back on the running backs whether one or both of them was available. I feel like Achane might not have been at that point in the season, but it would have to go back and check. But they at least had most of the majority of the guys. And again, that's why the Chiefs were so impressive there. I mean, I remember talking to Trent McDuffie before that game, and this was still in the midst of us sort of figuring out what the Chiefs defense was going to be. And he was looking forward to the game saying that the Chiefs wanted to go against the best to prove that they were what they said they were. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that emphatically answered it. When you win 21-14 against the Dolphins, who were averaging 30 points per game at the time, the number 1 offense in the NFL, I think they proved it in that game, and now they're going to have to prove it again because we talked about this, Vahe. Just it's sort of interesting, this flip switch that Patrick Mahomes has kind of come out with lately, where we hear so much about complimentary football, but the reality of the situation is the last few years we know it wasn't complimentary football. It was Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid saving the team when they had to. He's talked so much now about like they can punt and maybe they don't have to score that many points as long as they're not making these huge negative plays. The defense can come save them, so it will be fascinating to watch. This is a game where the defense really could win a game for them against one of the high-powered offenses, and so we'll see how kind of both sides react to that in the reality of the Chiefs.
Just back to your point about Tyreek, it is really fascinating because obviously he did some really notable things here, right?
Yeah.
Essential things to what they've done and who they became. On the other hand, the chirping he's done, it's not just chirping sort of trash talk. I mean, it's like actually saying, Tua's more accurate than Patrick. He's saying that before he ever played a game with Tua. Just stuff like that that's just kind of, unnecessary, despite the fact it was on podcast that he said it had to be said.
It's sort of needling. It's sort of needling a little bit. I mean, I just think, there's times too where he's mentioned, he didn't feel as close to Patrick as Travis did, and those guys hung out and he didn't. It's sort of, I don't know if scorned lover is the way to say it, but it is sort of bad blood. I don't know how to phrase it. There's been, you can tell he was hurt by some parts of the situation, and some parts where the Chiefs traded him away when they potentially could have paid him. This separation did not happen with Tyreek leaving and completely forgetting about the situation. He harbored some feelings afterwards, and he shared those feelings. So again, it makes it complicated. He did a lot of great things in Kansas City. He made some huge plays, obviously, and we can talk about Wasp in the Super Bowl and everything that he helped bring to the Chiefs and their success. But since then, it just has been a little bit of a needling, I think. A needling to Chiefs fans, Chiefs coaches, Chiefs teammates, even Patrick Mahomes. And that's really something I don't think we've seen from any other separation from a Chief going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's a little bit because of Tyreek's outspoken personality, reckless at times, I'd say, with how he does these things. But I would think that some of that is going to be I don't know if they have a literal bulletin board in there, but Patrick's not going to forget that.
No.
That's, and also I think Patrick really likes him. I think they were friends, but I still think that stuff is exactly what builds up Petty Pat when he's in these situations. And I Tyreek's insinuation he was underutilized here. Just, and anyway, I think your real point is the fascinating one, which is, I don't know how a fan will react. I suspect more boos than cheers.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the context of the day, which
it's the
is
playoffs.
Want to beat this team.
Yeah, and I don't expect Pat to forget either. I think there's another flip side to this as well, which is any decision like that is going to be made to trade a huge player. I don't believe for a second that Brett Veach didn't call Patrick Mahomes first and say, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? And so the fact that trade took place lets me know that somewhere along the way, Patrick Mahomes probably knew beforehand and was okay with the Chiefs moving in this direction. And obviously, listen, I mean, things don't have to work out for one side or the other. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl, and Tyreek Hill could be the offensive player of the year in the NFL this season. Before his injury, was pursuing 2,000 yards receiving for the first time ever of any receiver. So I don't know. I mean, if you look at this sort of clear-eyed, I don't know that either side was wrong or that either side really regrets what happened. It just sort of moved on, and
I think you can call it win-win.
Yeah,
I mean, and the context will flip a little bit based on what happens.
Absolutely.
Right? How will we look at the trade after the result of this game?
And we cannot ignore the undertone of this entire season for the Chiefs, which is they've needed a receiver. They've needed a receiver the whole year. Now, they won the Super Bowl last year, and so many guys contributed from that trade, the Trent McDuffies of the world, with the draft picks the Chiefs got. But if Tyreek comes in here and has a big game and Patrick Mahomes continues to struggle without a receiver he can rely upon, you can bet that's going to be something we'll talk about after the game, whether that sort of thing is something that we should have brought up more before all this came down. So it's a fascinating matchup. And listen, I know Sam talks about this all the time, but cheering for the storylines, this is great storylines for the first round of the playoffs. So this is definitely something we'll be watching closely and fascinated to see how it turns out on Saturday night.
It is interesting. We would feel differently about the way the receiving core has been, if this had been last year and the Chiefs hadn't won a Super Bowl already.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. That's the backdrop for any of this stuff is they worked out quite fine last year. This is the year I thought they'd have last year.
Yeah.
With the hodgepodge. Anyway, sorry, Blair.
Well, Chris Jones, I thought it was interesting today, made the point that he and Tyreek came in together, right? They're in the 2016 draft class, which when you think about it, that's a heck of a draft class to include
just
Chris
those
Jones
two.
and Tyreek Hill. I mean, potential 2 Hall of Famers in one draft class, both trending in that direction. And also, I thought it was, Chris Jones today, while we're on the topic, happened to remind us that this could be his last game at Arrowhead. None of us, as I said in the story, he said the quiet part out loud. We all expect this to be his last season in Kansas City. We just maybe not thinking about it yet. But Chris Jones at the podium today mentioned it. The other thing that Chris Jones said about Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins that I hadn't thought about, but he's right. In rematches, the Chiefs were just 1-2 this year.
Except the Chargers.
Well,
that's
right.
He
Well,
said 2-2.
He was 2-2. So after beating each of the 3 AFC West teams the first time, they lost 2 of the rematches. To the Broncos and then to the Raiders, that ugly Christmas Day game. So this is the rematch with the Miami Dolphins. And I don't know. Does the team that lost the first game have the advantage in a situation like this? It's one of those age-old sports questions. I don't know. Do they have more incentive? If I'm a Dolphins follower, I'm just more concerned about how they've looked in some of their last few games.
I did see a stat out there that the overs happen more often, which would make sense.
In rematches?
Yes, in rematches in the playoffs. If you played the team in the regular season, that normally there's more points scored in the second matchup. So that seems to be maybe a familiarity thing, a little bit more of a game planning sort of thing. So that would make more sense. I mean, the bottom line with this player, I think, is kind of what we talked about, which is Chiefs are 4-point favorites. So Vegas would tell us whatever that is, about 65% chance to win this game. Not ideal what you want in the wild card round, especially with the path the Chiefs have had in past years where they've locked up the 1 seed and haven't even had to play in this round. But they should win. You know what I mean? Like push comes to shove, they are the better team. They've shown that over the course of the season, especially with the roster that Miami is entering this game with. So it's really fascinating because it's on the Chiefs now. Like, we've been talking about their struggles all year. They know their struggles. We all know the flaws that they have and what hasn't come together offensively. Now, if it does, they're probably going to have to go through Murderer's Row. They're going to have to go through the Dolphins. They're going to have to go at the Bills. And they're going to have to go at the Ravens. And if this team makes the Super Bowl, they'll have earned it. And that'll be a fascinating path to track. Again, it'd be easier. You'd rather back your way into a Super Bowl and still celebrate it. But this Chiefs team, been saying all year, they're going to get back on track. They're going to get back to that level. Now's the time to go show it.
Did the Chiefs, we spent exactly 0 minutes talking about last weekend's game against the Chargers. Did the Chiefs get anything out of that game that could be useful for them in the playoffs? This was the game, of course, that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Justin Reed and L'Jarius Sneed, many of the main starters didn't play. Chris Jones, of course, did and picked up his 10th sack number 10.5 to cash an incentive. But did the Chiefs pick up anything out of that game that could be useful to them?
Maybe some line flexibility. They really rotated the crops through the line play, and maybe in the interest of depth, although they certainly lost something with Morris getting the concussion protocol. But I do think that's good, and maybe just some sort of general reps for a few more guys. Whether they established anything in terms of who they are or mindset, I would say is, not out the door, but I'd rather win that game than not, but I don't think that mattered.
I think starters rest means something. I'd be, you get beat up, and we have injury reports to look at, but I'm sure 2/3 of these injuries don't show up there. Guys are, my shoulder is bum, it hurts or whatever. So to hear guys in the locker room, I think it's a big thing to just have a week where you don't have to go through the grind. And it seemed like Patrick Mahomes was appreciative. I know we talked to Trent McDuffie in the locker room. He was appreciative just to say he was eager to get back out there and get in the game. It felt weird to be on the sideline, but yet to have a week to sort of get your body back and ready for this end of stretch. Blair, you wrote the story. The Chiefs looked tired this last half of the year for good reason. 6 straight games they had a rest disadvantage against the team they were facing, an NFL record. And so I think to get this breather at the right time, it was a good thing for the Chiefs. And I guess I'll ping it to you because I think the one person who played in those games potentially that could help them in the playoffs is McCole Hardman, and him getting out there every single snap might help the Chiefs.
Yeah, I was trying to get to that. That absolutely played every snap in the game. Now, whose snaps would he take going forward? I don't know about MVS or Justin Watson. Kadarius Toney, we still don't know exactly what his health status is. He's the speedster, difference maker, liability because of carelessness. But where could McCole Hardman make a difference?
So I was actually just talking with a buddy about this. I mean, this is sort of the question to me. Like, he is not the guy that they normally run out there on the deep routes. Justin Watson and MVS have been that. But we know the frustration that's been out there with MVS because he hasn't been able to really connect on deep ball with Mahomes, whether it's adjusting the ball or dropping the ball, whatever the case may be. Their speed is different, though, because, like, McCole is short burst sort of speed. You know what I mean? Like, 60-meter runner.
Yeah. He was their jet sweep guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. MVS is like a 200, 400-meter guy, which in terms of, like, geometry on a football field really helps you because if he takes off full speed, he's pulling safeties deeper. You know what I mean? Like, McCole will not pull those guys as deep because he'll get off quickly, but MVS is the one who will continue to burn and maybe open up things underneath. Now, how much do you change things in the playoffs? Do you trust MVS at this point? I mean, it was just a year ago in the AFC Championship game where MVS had the game of his life and really helped them out. So do you hope that reemerges? I just think it would be very difficult for the Chiefs to just completely pull a huge 180 in week 19 of the season and say, okay, McCole, you're now MVS. Is there a role for McCole? Potentially. And he got out there and got more reps. I think that's good. I just think probably pulling the plug on a player that's been so vital to you the last 2 years at this point is something that would be pretty risky for the Chiefs. And I got to play the body language card too. It was interesting watching the sidelines of this Chargers game. Mahomes throughout the whole first quarter was standing with Kelsey and MVS throughout that entire time. MVS did not play in that game, which I think lets you know something about how they feel about him. And even in the locker room last week, MVS and Kelsey were kind of in a little bit of a wrestling match right in the front of us and the reporters. So those guys seemed to be getting along, game after. Travis seemed pretty frustrated on field when MVS had his drop pass. So I would just say all those indications lead me to think that they're going to continue to rely on him. If nothing else, as that deep threat, pulling the defense away decoy. But at minimum, a guy that they're paying $11 million to perform in the biggest of moments. And guys, we know how this works. Sky Moore, a lot of those things that didn't work out well for him on punt returns worked out well in the AFC Championship game last year. You completely rewrite your narrative. And this is a chance for MVS to rewrite his. I think the Chiefs are going to try to have him in the same spot. It might be too late to try something different.
Which leads me to this point. This is the Chiefs' time of year. It has been in the Patrick Mahomes era. Patrick Mahomes, we were talking about this earlier, Vahe. He's got the highest passer rating of any quarterback in postseason history. The Chiefs have never had a postseason with Patrick Mahomes in which they were shut out. They've always won at least one playoff game. Those things are kind of on the line for this team because this is the lowest seed they will have had, right? The worst record in the regular season, the lowest seed, 11-6, and the number 3 seed. And Jesse, as you mentioned, the most difficult path, likely, if favorites win, continue to win.
Things can happen, but yes.
They've never, and the big, the big obvious one, they've never played in someone else's. Yeah. Well, they have technically. They played the Bucs in their stadium in the Super Bowl, but that was considered a neutral field.
Yeah. And look, Blair, I mean, I had not remembered that, or maybe even known it in the first place till you said it today. But I looked after you brought up that Patrick is the highest rated postseason quarterback in NFL history. Pro Football Reference, I just looked down that list. I mean, you got Joe Montana's 11th, Bart Starr is 2nd, Alex Smith is in the top 10.
Yeah, didn't throw interceptions. That was his secret.
But to your point, also Patrick is 11-3 in the postseason. He's never failed to get them to the AFC Championship game. I mean, think about that.
It's amazing. It's incredible.
That's 5 times. I mean, that's unreal. And so conceivably, most likely a much harder path. But we have seen things shift in favor of the Chiefs that way. And you just never know, right? I mean, how many times have we watched a playoff thing and thought, well, this is that path? The key point here is you don't have to play all of them. You only play the one at a time, obviously, but also you don't know that you're going to get all those scenarios. Probably would if you get there, but that's why they play the game.
I just think this is what the Chiefs have going for them. There's going to be years that are outside your control where somebody's hurt, somebody key, you just don't have them. And maybe, probably, at some point, we've seen how many AFC quarterbacks went out with injuries this year. At some point, the Chiefs are going to be in the playoffs and Patrick Mahomes is going to be hurt. And that's going to be a bummer. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's happened in previous ones where guys have had to come in. He's not hurt. You know what I mean? Andy Reid's still here. The play calls are still in. Travis Kelce's still on the sideline. So, yeah, if you're a Chiefs fan, I think the optimism here, they're not in a perfect spot. They're not in the spot they want to be. All that is clear. But, like, those guys are in still, and they are not injured, and they potentially, we've seen what they have done in the past. We've seen what they do in the biggest moments. We've seen them succeed in these situations before. So all that's in front of them. Could they make a run? They absolutely could. Now, is it going to be difficult? Yes. And the most difficult path, most likely, that they've had to make a Super Bowl. But the bottom line is you still got probably the best player in the NFL, and you've got a top 5 head coach of all time on your sideline. And that potentially, in 60-minute samples, can beat another team that's very good. And they can do it 3 different times, and they can make a Super Bowl. So I think that for the Chiefs is just the number one thing is, like, he's not battling an ankle injury that's sidelining him and makes it so he can't scramble. He's not having to work around these things that are physically going to limit him. Mahomes should be 100% Mahomes in this particular game and potentially for the next 2 games as long as something else doesn't happen. And that is going to give you a puncher's chance. That's where the Chiefs need to be every single year in the playoffs, is giving themselves a puncher's chance because they've got the best football player on the planet on their sideline. And so that really is why you can't count any of them out in this particular game or this particular postseason, because all the pieces are there from what we've seen work in the past. And so could it work again? It absolutely could.
You know, honestly, my biggest point of concern about what the Chiefs can do is really simplistic but true. It's the turnover game. They are the worst turnover ratio team of Andy Reid's tenure here. As good as the defense has been, does not generate enough turnovers to make up for the offense's giveaways. They're 28th, I guess, is what they are now. And that to me is, it's obvious in every football game, but because of the nature of this team, I think it's a team that's absolutely good enough to make a run if it doesn't, do the ultimate self-destruct mode of turn over the ball more than it gets it back. Game to game that can be different, but I think that's what's going to be the most demonstrable element of whether they can succeed here.
That's encouraging and discouraging because that thing normally is not reliable. Normally, it's one of those things that comes and goes. You know what I mean? And it's not going to.
And you've said that a few times.
I keep saying my prediction, and I'm usually wrong because then the Chiefs.
Natural.
But then they give away 2 turnovers, and they're worth 7 points each, and then they lose a game by 4. And it's like, well, they were 10 points better than this other team, except they handed the other team 14 points. So that's the good and the bad, right? Like, they have a high ceiling offensively if they don't screw up. How many games have they now screwed up this year? Not very many. And we talk about the discipline things all year, which hurts them, the penalty things. They have to drive all the way down the field, and that's why penalties kill them. You know what I mean? That's why little things kill them. That's why these turnovers kill them, because then to get back in the game, they've got to drive another 13 plays down the field. So I think it's the fact that you can drive 13 plays and score touchdowns is great. But that means that these little things are really important. And so can the Chiefs turn that off for 3 games? They could. What are the odds of them doing that for 3 games? That has to be the concern. And so I'm totally with you, Vahe. I would just say the encouraging part is not every team can be efficient offensively. This still can be an efficient offense. But the mistakes are what has killed it. Can they avoid mistakes at the most important time? Maybe that's part of that mindset flip that you talked about with Patrick Mahomes. Can you just be a little bit more safe with the football? Maybe that's okay because this defense is really good too.
They've only won the turnover battle in 2 games this year.
That's
twice. Now, even like this past weekend or losing it 15 times.
I will say, I saw the stat too. They are like the worst when it comes to fumble recoveries of their own, and worse when it comes to fumble recoveries, or one of the worst when it comes to getting on defense. That's completely
They never
fluky.
see the ball. They never see the ball on the ground.
That one's fluky. That one's 50-50. You know what I mean? That one can change over time, but even more fluky, I think, is the defensive one. Now, you'd rather force punts, all that stuff, but that one can change in a hurry, and some of that is game flow too. I mean, if the Chiefs avoided their mistakes early and you get up in a game 10-0, you're going to see some turnovers come because teams have to sort of come back to you. So we'll see. That's the one part of the game. I mean, this is why – listen, if we're just going to be completely honest here, this is why the Marty teams didn't beat themselves, could go 13-3, but it's tougher when the playoffs because you're relying on another team to mess up. If you're another team playing the Chiefs, you're relying on the Chiefs to mess up. It's not always in your control. So it's in the Chiefs' control.
The Marty teams did all those things correct. They never had the quarterback.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Pass offense, pass defense, those are big things. The Chiefs are really good at both of those, or at least better than the average team in both of those, especially when they don't turn the ball over. So that's an advantage the Chiefs have, but got to avoid those things that we know kill them.
So it begins on Saturday in less than ideal conditions at Arrowhead Stadium. So thanks, Vahe. Thanks, Jesse. And Sam, we'll talk to you soon. That'll do it for today. Thanks to producer Monty Davis for putting together the show, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Vahe Gregorian and Jesse Newell for sharing their insights. Check out the very best in Chiefs playoff coverage in the print editions of the Kansas City Star on kansascity.com, and in the morning sports edition, the nation's best digital sports page. Go to liveedition.kansascity.com and check it out for yourself. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.